This is an original fictional story written by me, inspired by imagination and creative storytelling. It's not real, but it is told as if it happened to me. Some movement change you forever. For me, it was the moment I realized the same woman who once tried to end my life was now the only one making sure I stayed alive. The contradiction is where this story begins. This is a slow, serious, emotional story set in a dangerous world shaped by conflict, silence, and unspoken choices. It carries mystery, tension, and an unexpected bond formed in the aftermath of violence. There is no glory in the battle here, only consequences. What follows is not about victory, but about survival, guilt, and the strange weight of mercy when it comes from the last person you expect. I tell this story from my own perspective as I lived it, confused, wounded, and trying to understand why the rules suddenly changed after the fighting stopped. At night, when no one was watching, she would come, no words, no explanations, just food, placed quietly beside me as if the past could be ignored for a few moments. Each time she returned, the danger felt closer, not farther away. Because when an enemy shows kindness in secret, it means something is about to break, either in them or in you. This is where my story truly begins. On the night I realized the war was over, but something far more complicated had just started.
Moonlight made a religion out of the dead. It laid a cold, blue blessing over the battlefield, over the splintered pikes, the snapped arrow shafts, the blackened pits where pitch had burned, the torn banners that now hung like tongues cut from throats. The wind moved through the ruined plain with a slow patience, tugging at loose cloth, whispering through armor joints, and there were moments, brief, treacherous moments, when it sounded like the field was breathing. I sat with my back to a broken stone wall that had once belonged to a chapel. The stones were old and pitted, still smelling faintly of incense beneath the newer stink of iron and rot. My breastplate was cracked down the middle like a rib split open. Blood had dried in the seams, stiff as varnish, and every breath pulled something sharp inside me, as if my own lungs had teeth. I kept my sword across my lap because the alternative was admitting I couldn't lift it anymore. And then she came as she always did now. Not from the direction of the vampire lines. Those had withdrawn days ago, vanishing into fog and forest with the easy arrogance of creatures that don't fear dawn. She came from the deeper ruin, from the shadows between collapsed stones, where broken statues leaned like drunk saints. A woman's silhouette at first, tall, lithe, armored in dark crimson plate that drank the moonlight and gave it back as a dull bruise. Silver engravings curled along her pauldrons and cuisses like vines around a grave marker. Her long black hair moved freely, unbound, spilling down her back in a silk river. The only true color on her face were her eyes, red, bright, too alive, yet softened now by something that looked disturbingly close to worry. She knelt in front of me with a steadiness that made my own trembling feel obscene. In both hands she held a wooden bowl. Steam rose faintly from it, warm against the night. She did not look at me, not fully, as if her gaze might be a confession she couldn't bear to speak aloud. She extended the bowl toward me with the careful reverence of an offering. "Eat," she said. Her voice was low, not the hiss I remembered from battle, not the triumphant snarl of a predator. It sounded like someone trying not to wake a child. I stared at the bowl. Broth, I thought. Some kind of stew. I could smell onions, salt, a trace of something sweet. Carrot or apple? My stomach tightened painfully, furious with me for being hungry in the presence of my enemy. "Why?" I asked, and my voice cracked on the word. She flinched so slightly I might have imagined it. "Because you'll die if you don't." "That's kind," I said, and even I could hear how stupid the sarcasm sounded when you couldn't stand. "Considering you tried to kill me." She stayed kneeling, her gauntlet steady, the bowl unwavering. I saw dried blood along the edges of her armor, darker than mine, almost black. There were scratches in the crimson lacquer where steel had bitten. In the battle she had moved like a nightmare made elegant, cutting men down with a curved blade and bare hands alike. I remembered her. Gods, I remembered her. standing over bodies as if she owned the ground beneath them. I remembered her coming for me. I remembered the moment her eyes locked to mine through the chaos, as if she had recognized something, as if she had decided something. I remembered the strike that should have ended me. And then I remembered waking here, alive, broken but alive. She said nothing to my accusation. Her gaze remained fixed somewhere just left of my shoulder, as if my face was too bright, too dangerous to touch. I could have refused. Pride has killed braver men than me, but hunger is older than pride. My hands shook as I reached for the bowl. She didn't help, but she adjusted her grip to let me take it without spilling. Her fingers were cool through the gauntlet, and when my skin brushed the metal edge of her glove, a shiver ran through me that had nothing to do with cold. The broth was hot enough to sting. I drank anyway, tasted like life. Simple, salted, stubborn. She watched the steam, not me. When I finished, she took the bowl back, her movements careful as if I might break from sudden motion. I wiped my mouth with the back of my hand and tasted blood. "Say it," I demanded. "Say why you're doing this. Tell me what you want." Her red eyes lifted a fraction, then dropped again, as if she'd touched fire. "I want you to heal." "That's not an answer." Silence stretched between us. The moon moved behind thin cloud, dimming the field. Finally, she stood. The armor made no noise. How did she do that? Even in battle, she'd moved with impossible quiet. She turned away, hair sweeping like ink. "I will return tomorrow," she said. "Stop," I called after her, and the pain made the word ugly. "If you're going to finish it, just finish it. Don't do this to me." She paused at the edge of moonlight, half in shadow. For the first time since these nightly visits began, she looked back fully. Her face was pale enough to seem carved, high cheekbones, mouth set in a line that looked practiced. But in her eyes, those bright predatory eyes, there was something else. Guilt, like a bruise under the skin. "I already tried," she said softly, "and I failed." Then she walked into the ruin and vanished, leaving only the scent of iron and a warmth in my belly I didn't trust. I sat in the quiet, listening to the wind pray over the dead. And somewhere in the dark, a vampire woman who should have been my executioner was bringing me food every night, and refusing to tell me why. The day before she began feeding me, the world had been nothing but noise. War has a sound all its own. Metal screaming, horses shrieking, men making animal noises they would be ashamed of in any other hour. But beneath that is something worse. The sound of decisions being made too late. I was called Alaric Vane, captain of the 3rd Spear, sworn to the crown of Lothain. I had been a soldier long enough that my name felt like a tool. Useful, worn, replaceable. My father had died holding a bridge against raiders. My older brother had died in a winter ambush, his body never found. I had thought, foolishly, that I might be the one to live long enough to become an old officer with stories. The kind young recruits listened to with half awe and half disbelief. Then the vampires came down from the northern reaches, and stories stopped being entertainment. They were warning. The crown had called it a border dispute at first. Negotiations had failed. Emissaries vanished. Then villages started turning up emptied, doors hanging open, soup still cold on the table. Not burned, not looted, just emptied, as if the people had stepped outside and forgot to come back. Our priests called it a plague of darkness. Our generals called it an invasion. The common folk called it what it was, monsters. We met them on the fields near Grayfen Chapel because the ground there was hard, the sight lines clear, and because our commanders still believed in the comfort of open battle, lines, banners, honorable slaughter. They were wrong. The vampires did not fight like men. They fought like a storm that had learned how to enjoy itself. The first time I saw her, she was on a horse that looked carved from midnight. Her armor was crimson, the color of dried roses, and it made her look like a wound that had learned to walk. Silver filigree glinted along her breastplate. She wore no helm. Why would she? What arrow could catch her if she didn't allow it? Her hair streamed behind her as she rode through our line as if the spears were grass. She moved with a terrible grace, her blade a crescent that caught moonlight even beneath the overcast sky. She didn't hack or flail. She chose her kills the way a painter chooses brushstrokes. I shouted orders until my throat was raw. I watched my men die, their courage turning to panic, panic turning to screaming, screaming turning to silence. And then, amid the chaos, she turned her horse toward me. At first I thought it was chance. Then I realized the kills around me weren't random. They were clearing a path. She dismounted without breaking stride and came at me like a whispered curse. I raised my sword. The impact of our blades rang through my bones. She was stronger than any human woman had a right to be, stronger than most men, and yet it wasn't brute force. It was certainty. Her eyes were red even in daylight, and when she looked at me, it felt like being recognized by something ancient. You, she said, just that. Not a taunt, not a threat, as if she'd been searching for me and was surprised to find me made of flesh. I didn't answer. I swung. She parried with contemptuous ease. Her blade slid along mine and kissed my gauntlet. The metal bit. Pain flashed. She stepped inside my guard, close enough that I could smell her. Cold air, old stone, and something sharp like winter apples. Then her hand shot out and gripped my breastplate, fingers closing around the metal as if it were cloth. She yanked me forward and drove her blade into the seam beneath my ribs. The world narrowed to a bright, obscene point. I gasped, and blood filled my mouth. I remember falling to my knees. I remember her leaning down, her face close to mine, and the battlefield noise fading as if the world was holding its breath. "Say your name," she commanded. Even then, wounded and furious, pride rose like bile. "Why?" I spat blood between my teeth. "So you can remember it when you say it," she repeated, and her voice shook on the edge of something I couldn't name. "Alaric," I said, because I was dying anyway. "Alaric Vane." Her eyes widened, not with triumph, with terror. For a heartbeat, she looked like a woman who had just opened the wrong door. "No," she whispered. "No, you can't be." I tried to lift my sword again. My arm didn't obey. The world tilted. She pulled her blade out, and I expected the finishing cut. Instead, she pressed her palm to the wound in my armor. Heat flared, startlingly warm from her skin, searing through the metal. The pain changed, not lessened, not healed, but suspended, as if time had been made to stutter. Then she struck me, not with her blade, with the flat of her hand against my temple. The world went black. When I woke, I was here, against the chapel wall, the battlefield quiet, the dead already starting to smell like the future. My armor was still cracked. My blood was still mine. But I was alive. And that night, under moonlight, she came with a bowl of food. I had thought it was a trick. Poison, perhaps, or some slow curse. But the broth had tasted like onions and salt, like a human had made it, which meant she'd found it somewhere or stolen it or, God's help me, cooked it. Why would a vampire cook? And why for me? I looked down at my hands now, days later, the tremor still there, the skin pale under grime. I had survived countless skirmishes, survived hunger marches and disease camps and the thousand small miseries of army life. But surviving her mercy felt like something else entirely. Felt like being kept, like being spared for a reason. And the reason refused to speak. The second night she brought bread. Not the hard army biscuit that could crack a tooth, but real bread, round loaf, torn open, steaming slightly as if it had been kept warm beneath her cloak. She set it beside the bowl of stew with a kind of formal care, as if arranging offerings at an altar. I watched her hands. Her gauntlets were off tonight. Bare fingers, pale and slender, nails short, clean. They looked human enough until you noticed how still they were. No restless twitch, no fidgeting. Predators don't waste motion. "You could have killed me twice over by now," I said. She did not answer. She sat this time, not kneeling, a few feet away on a fallen stone, posture straight, eyes turned toward the ruined field. I tore a piece of bread. My fingers shook less than yesterday. Progress, I told myself, though my pride hated it. I dipped the bread into the stew and ate. Salt, fat, meat that might have been rabbit, herbs I couldn't name. It was too good. My suspicion deepened with every bite. Is this how it works? I asked. You keep me alive until I'm strong again, then you drain me? Her jaw tightened. I don't drink from you, she said. You don't have to, I replied. You could bring others. You could. I said I don't drink from you. There was a sharpness in her tone now, a flash of the warrior I remembered. It made my spine stiffen. My hand drifted to my sword. She noticed. Her eyes dropped to the weapon, then back to the horizon. I will not harm you, she said, quieter. That's what you already did, I muttered. She closed her eyes for a moment, as if absorbing the insult like a penance. When she opened them, the red was dimmer, softened by the shadows. You were in my way, she said, in battle, and I... Her voice faltered, almost imperceptibly. I made a choice. What choice? I demanded. She didn't answer. Instead, she reached into a small satchel at her side and withdrew a cloth bundle. She held it out. I didn't take it at first. What is that? Bandages, she said. Clean. I laughed short, bitter. Did you steal them from my camp too? Her gaze flicked to me, the faintest flare of anger. Yes, she said. Would you prefer I tear my cloak? I'd prefer you explain yourself. Silence. The wind sighed through the field, carrying distant wolf calls from the forest. Somewhere, a crow shifted on a broken spear, restless even at night. I took the bandages. My wound had been crudely wrapped with torn cloth days ago. When I peeled it back, the smell made my stomach lurch. Infection would take me if something else didn't. She didn't flinch, but her hands clenched in her lap. Help me, I said abruptly. Her eyes snapped to mine. I hated how vulnerable it sounded. I hated that I needed it. But pride was a poor shield against fever. She hesitated only a heartbeat, then moved closer. Her fingers hovered near the torn edge of my armor. May I? She asked. The question, polite, almost gentle, hit me harder than any blow. I nodded because words failed. She worked with practiced efficiency, removing the old cloth, cleaning the wound with water she'd brought in a skin, then applying the new bandages. Her touch was careful, as if she feared hurting me, as if she feared what she might do if she wasn't careful. When her fingers brushed my bare skin, I expected cold. Instead, she was cool but not dead, like river water in early spring. You're not frozen, I blurted. Her hands paused. I am not a corpse, she said, and the bitterness in her voice surprised me. Not yet. What does that mean? She tied the bandage knot and leaned back. Her eyes lifted toward the shattered chapel roof, where moonlight poured through like milk. My name is Serapha, she said, as if offering a concession. Serapha of House Valerin, a vampire house name old and feared. I'd heard it in campfire stories. Valerin the blood-threaded, Valerin the oathbreakers, Valerin the night court's knives. Alaric Vane, I said, though she already knew. Her lips twitched, almost a smile, then vanished. Eat, she said again, as if that was the only safe instruction between us. After she left, I lay awake longer than my pain allowed, staring at the chapel stones, replaying her movements. A vampire who stole bandages and bread. A vampire who asked permission before touching a man she'd stabbed. A vampire who sat with me in the dark and looked at the horizon like she was waiting for something to rise. The next day I tried to stand. My legs betrayed me. I fell hard, breath knocked out, pain exploding in my side. I cursed, loud enough that it echoed off stone. And in the silence after, I realized something else. I was alone. No patrols. No scavengers. No wolves brave enough to come close. The battlefield had become a quiet ruin, and I was at its center, protected, or imprisoned. That night, when Serapha returned with food, I didn't thank her. Couldn't. But I didn't threaten her either. Instead I asked, softly, "Why am I still alive?" She held the bowl out. Her hands did not shake. But her voice did, just a little, when she said, "Because I cannot undo what I have already done." "And what is that?" She looked at me then, fully, directly, red eyes like coals under ash. "I marked you," she said. My throat went dry. "With what?" Her gaze dropped to my chest, to the place beneath the bandages. "With myself." The word marked lodged in my mind like a splinter. In the morning, with Serapha gone, I peeled back the bandages with trembling fingers. The wound throbbed, angry but cleaner. I expected to see torn flesh, bruising, maybe the faint yellow of healing. Instead, beneath the scabbed edges, there was a line of dark red that did not belong to blood. A symbol, thin as a vein, shaped like a looping crescent around a vertical stroke, almost like an eye or a hook or a question, pulsed faintly when my heart beat. I pressed my fingertip to it. Heat flared, sharp enough to make me gasp. My vision blurred for a second, and in that blur I saw something that wasn't the ruin. A stone hall lit by chandeliers made of bone, a woman kneeling on cold marble, and a voice, male, deep, amused, saying, "Bind it. Bind the human. Prove your loyalty." Then it snapped back to the chapel wall and the smell of damp stone. I sat there, shaking. A hallucination, fever, or something worse. When Serapha came that night, I didn't let her speak. I yanked my tunic down, exposing the mark. Her face tightened, and for the first time she looked openly afraid. "What is this?" I demanded. "It is a tether," she said. "To what?" Her throat bobbed. "To me." My anger flared. "So you did it to keep track of me? To what? Claim me?" No, the word came out too fast. "Not claim." "Then why?" She crouched, eyes fixed on the symbol as if it burned her to look at it. "Because I was ordered," she said quietly. The admission hit like a fist. "Ordered by whom?" Serapha's jaw clenched. The red in her eyes brightened. Not with hunger, but with something like shame. "My house," she said. "My lord." "Your lord." I spat. "So you're not even free." Her gaze snapped up, sharp. "Do not speak as if you know chains," she hissed. I surprised myself by not flinching. Pain and exhaustion had stripped me down to something raw, something honest. "Then teach me," I said. "If you're going to keep me alive, tell me what you did. Tell me what this means." She stared at me a long moment, as if weighing whether truth would kill me faster than secrecy. Finally, she exhaled. Unnecessary for her, I realized, but done anyway, like a habit from when she'd still been human. "This mark," she began, voice low. "It is an oath thread, a binding sigil. My blood, placed into your wound." My stomach turned. "You put your blood in me?" "Yes." "Why would you?" "Because my lord demanded a trophy," she interrupted, and her voice cracked on the last word. "A living one." The way she said living made it feel like an accusation against the world. "He wanted a human captain bound to House Valerin," she continued. "A message to your crown. Pet for his court. Proof that the night can own what the day claims." My hands tightened on my sword. "And you chose me." "I did not choose," she said, then faltered. "Not at first." The mark on my skin pulsed again, as if listening. "What happens now?" I asked, forcing the question through clenched teeth. "Can he control me?" Serapha swallowed. "Not fully. Not yet. But the tether means your pain can be called. Your body can be compelled in small ways. Your dreams can be invaded." I remembered the vision. The bone chandeliers, the kneeling woman, the amused voice. "Like this morning," I said hoarsely. "I saw something." Her eyes closed briefly. "Yes. So you've been, what, watching me? In my head?" "No," her eyes snapped open, fierce. "I have not touched your mind. I swear it." "You swear?" I mocked. "What is a vampire's oath worth?" Her expression flinched as if struck. For a moment, the predator fell away, and I saw a woman, young, tired, furious at herself. "My oaths are all I have left," she said. Silence stretched. I stared at the mark again. It felt like a brand, a violation, a theft of sovereignty. And yet I was alive. Alive because she had stabbed me, then put her blood into me, then carried me out of battle and hidden me here. Alive because she brought me food, bandages, water. The contradictions made my head ache. "Why didn't you finish it?" I asked finally. "If you were ordered, why not just kill me and take my head like the others?" Serapha's gaze drifted away. "Because when you said your name," her voice trailed off. "When I said my name," I repeated slower. "What?" She looked at me then, and her red eyes were wet. Not with tears, but with something that made them shine differently. "I have known that name," she whispered. "In another mouth." A chill ran through me. "What are you talking about?" Serapha's hands curled into fists. "There is a story my house keeps," she said, as if reciting from memory. "A prophecy, if you wish to mock it, that one day a human bearing a certain bloodline would be bound to Valerin, not as a trophy, but as a hinge. Turning point. A breaking." I stared. "I'm no prophecy." She gave a humorless laugh. "No one ever is." My throat tightened. "So you spared me because you think I matter." "I spared you because I feared what would happen if I didn't," she said. "And what happens?" Her voice dropped, almost too quiet to hear. "My lord is not the worst monster in my house," she said. "But he is the one closest to you now." I wanted to ask a dozen questions. I wanted to demand she remove the mark, tell me how to break it, tell me how to kill her lord, tell me how to crawl back to my army with my pride intact. But the truth was simpler and uglier. I was weak. I could barely stand. My wound would reopen if I tried to fight. And the only person who knew what had been done to me was the vampire who had done it. "I need you," I said, and hated myself for it. Serapha looked as if the words hurt her. "I know," she whispered. She handed me the bowl. And as I ate, I felt the mark beneath my skin pulse in time with my heartbeat, as if my body had become a shared sentence, unfinished. By the fourth night, I could stand without falling. Not for long, but long enough to make a point. Serapha arrived with food as usual: stew, bread, a small flask of watered wine. She placed it down, then sat back, eyes scanning the ruins like a sentry. I rose slowly, leaning on the wall, sword in hand. Her gaze flicked to the blade, but she didn't move. No fear, only readiness. "I'm not your pet," I said. "I have never treated you as one," she replied. "You marked me." Her jaw tightened. "Yes." "You stabbed me." "Yes." "You're feeding me." "Yes." "And you won't tell me what you want." A pause. Then, quietly, "I want you to live long enough to choose what you will become." The answer made me angrier because it sounded almost noble. Noble words for someone who calls humans trophies. "I did not call you." "You said your lord wanted a trophy," I cut in. "So you bound me. For him." Serapha's gaze dropped to the dirt. "Yes." I stepped forward. Pain lanced, but I kept moving. "Then take me to him," I said. "If that's what this is, let's stop pretending it's mercy." Her head snapped up. "No." "Why not?" "Afraid he'll punish you." Her eyes flashed, and for a moment the old battle Serapha was back, sharp as a drawn knife. "Afraid he will use you," she snarled. "Afraid he will make you beg for the things you will not even realize you are begging for. Afraid he will hollow you out and leave your body walking and smiling and calling it devotion." The rawness in her voice stopped me. I swallowed. "And you think hiding me here is better?" "It is time," she said, and the word sounded like a prayer. "Time for your wound to heal. Time for me to decide." "Decide what?" Serapha's hands clenched around her knees. She looked at the moonlight spilling across broken weapons. "To betray my house," she said. The confession landed with a strange, slow weight. You're serious, I said. She looked at me as if I was slow. Do you think I would risk coming here if I were not? I stared at her, trying to reconcile the woman before me with the warrior who had cut my men down. The predator. The nightmare. What are you? I asked, and the question came out softer than I intended. Not your name, your house. What are you, Serapha? What does your kind feel? Her lips pressed together. Do you want a lesson in monsters? I want the truth. She leaned back against a stone, the posture suddenly weary. We are not all the same, she said. Some of us are made by hunger, some by fear, some by devotion, some by cruelty, and some, her voice faltered, some are made by the inability to die. I frowned. What does that mean? Serapha looked at her hands, as if seeing blood there. I was turned in a chapel, she said softly. Not unlike this one. The words sent a ripple through me. You were human once. Yes, I had known it in theory. Vampires had to come from somewhere. But theory is different from hearing it in a voice that still held echoes of breath. How long ago? She gave a small shrug. Long enough that I no longer remember my own mother's face without effort. Why were you turned? Silence. Then, because I refused to marry a man who beat his servants. The answer was so mundane, so human, it felt obscene in the ruin. Serapha continued, voice flat. My father called me disobedient. He said I needed correcting. He invited House Valerin's emissary to our estate, thinking to secure favor. The emissary saw me. He said my defiance would be useful. He asked me to kneel. I refused. Her red eyes lifted to mine. He broke my neck, she said. Then he fed me his blood and waited for me to wake. When I did, he offered me a choice. Serve, or be buried alive in consecrated ground until the sun turned my bones to dust. My stomach twisted. You served, I said. I survived, she corrected. Survival looks like service when you are trapped. I wanted to hate her. It would have been simpler. A clean line, monster and man. But the story made her feel shaped. Not born evil. Forged. And now? I asked. Now you're a captain in their army. Serapha's mouth tightened. A blade. A symbol. A warning. And you're tired. She didn't deny it. I sat back down, the movement making my wound protest. I stared at the stew she'd brought, suddenly not hungry. If you betray your house, I said, they'll hunt you. Yes. They'll kill you. Yes. I studied her profile, the way moonlight traced her cheekbone. She looked like someone carved from sorrow. Then why do it? I asked. Her voice was barely above a whisper. Because when I stabbed you, she said, I felt something I have not felt in a century. What? She turned her head slowly, meeting my gaze. Fear, she said. Of me. No, she said. Of myself. The mark on my chest pulsed again, and in that pulse I felt impossible, unsettling. A faint echo of her emotion, like a second heartbeat under my skin. Fear. Not hunger. Fear of what she might become if she kept obeying. And suddenly, for the first time since the battle, I understood something essential. She wasn't feeding me because she cared about my life. She was feeding me because she was trying to save her own soul. On the 5th night, she arrived late. The moon was higher than usual, bright enough that the ruins looked almost silver. I had been dozing, drifting in and out of fever dreams where bone chandeliers swayed above me and a voice laughed at my helplessness. When I heard her footsteps, soft, impossibly light, I jolted awake and reached for my sword. She came into view carrying the bowl, but something was wrong. Her posture was stiff, her movements too controlled. Her hair was loose as always, but one side clung to her cheek as if damp. Blood. Not mine. Hers. It streaked dark down the edge of her jaw and disappeared beneath her collar. I stood too quickly, pain flaring. What happened? Serapha froze, as if surprised by my concern. Then she looked away. Nothing, she said. Don't lie. A sharp exhale. A patrol, she admitted. From my house. You fought them. Her lips pressed thin. I avoided them. Why are you bleeding? She hesitated. Then, reluctantly, she turned her head enough for me to see the wound. A cut across her neck, shallow but vivid. Silver. The edges looked burned. Silvered blade, I said, recognition sparking. That's why it won't close. Serapha's expression flickered. Yes. I moved closer before thinking. Instinct. Human stubbornness. I reached out, fingers hovering near the cut. She recoiled so fast it startled me. An animal flinch. Don't, she hissed. I stopped, hands still raised. I'm not trying to hurt you. Her red eyes fixed on my hand as if it was a weapon. Your touch, she began, then stopped. My touch what? She swallowed, throat moving carefully around pain. The mark, she said. It makes you connected. When you touch me, it is not only skin. I stared at my hand, suddenly aware of my own pulse, my warmth, my humanity like a brand. You're afraid I'll feel what you feel, I guessed. Serapha's eyes flickered. Yes. I lowered my hand slowly. Then tell me how to help without touching. She hesitated. You cannot. The words made something in me snap. Not anger, exactly, but frustration at being helpless again. You brought me bandages, I said. Let me return it. I do not need your. You do? I cut in. And I'm sick of sitting here eating your stolen stew while you bleed. For a moment, she looked almost startled by my bluntness. Then her gaze softened, just slightly, and she sat down with a controlled grace that still spoke of strength. If you must, she said, be quick. I tore a strip from my spare cloth, once part of my tunic, and dipped it in water. I approached slowly, giving her time to object. She didn't move, but her hands clenched so tightly I heard the leather creak. I lifted the cloth to her neck. The moment it touched her skin, the world shifted. Not visually, not like a dream, emotionally. A rush of sensation flooded me. Cold stone under bare feet, the metallic taste of fear, the weight of unseen eyes, and beneath it all a constant, grinding pressure like a hand around her throat. Control. Someone else's will pressing down on hers. And layered over that, sharp and immediate, was pain, silver burn, tight and angry. I gasped, stumbling back. Serapha's eyes widened. You felt it. Yes. I whispered, voice hoarse. Gods, Serapha, you. Do not pity me, she snapped, but the words lacked force. Her shoulders trembled, just slightly. Finish. I forced myself forward again, bracing for the flood. I cleaned the cut gently, the cloth turning dark. The sensations surged again, but I focused on the task, on the simple human logic of care. As I wrapped the cloth around her neck, my fingers brushed her collarbone. A new sensation hit. Memory. Not mine. Hers. A chapel floor, cold marble. A young woman kneeling, hair braided, hands shaking. A man's shadow falling over her. A voice saying, you will learn obedience, Serapha. Then another voice, female, older, cruel, whispering, you will thank us. You will beg for our chains. I jerked my hand away, breath ragged. Serapha's eyes were bright, almost luminous. Enough. I stepped back, trembling. Who did this to you tonight? She tied the bandage herself, fingers steady despite the wound. A hound, she said. A hound. A vampire bred to track oath threads, she said. He followed the scent of my blood away from camp. And you got away. Yes, she said, but there was no pride in it. Only dread. They're close, I realized. They're looking for you. And for me. Serapha's gaze flicked to my chest. Yes. I clenched my jaw. Then we need a plan. Her lips parted, as if she hadn't expected the word we. I can barely stand, I continued, but I can think. I can fight soon. Serapha studied me with an intensity that made my skin prickle. Why would you help me? She asked quietly. After what I did? The question was not bait. It was genuine, almost bewildered. I opened my mouth, ready to say something about survival, about mutual benefit, about vengeance. But the truth that came out was smaller and stranger. Because you came back, I said. Because you could have left me to rot and you didn't. Serapha's eyes dropped. That is not enough. It's what I have, I replied. A long silence. Then, barely audible, you should hate me. I do, I said, and it was true. And I don't. And I don't know what to do with that. Serapha's throat worked around the bandage. She looked like she might say something more. Instead, she stood. I will return tomorrow, she said, voice controlled again. But before she left, she hesitated, and her eyes met mine for the briefest moment. There was something in them like a question, or a plea. Then she vanished into the ruins, leaving me shaking. Not from pain this time, but from what I had felt through my own fingertips. A vampire's fear, a vampire's chains, and, buried beneath it all like an ember that refused to die, a longing so fierce it hurt. The major twist arrived in my sleep. That morning, after Serapha's wounded visit, I dozed with my back against stone and my sword across my lap. The mark beneath my bandages pulsed faintly, like a second heartbeat. I dreamed of fire, not the orange of campfires, not the bright clean burn of sunrise. This was dark fire, blue at the edges, black at the center, burning in a wide hearth inside a stone hall. I stood in that hall, but my body felt wrong, heavy, slow, like I was walking through water. My armor was clean, uncracked. My wound did not hurt. Across the room was a throne carved from something that looked like bone and blackwood. A man sat there, not old, not young, ageless in the way vampires are, but his beauty was the kind that made your skin crawl. Perfect features, pale skin, hair the color of dried blood. He wore black robes with crimson lining, and around his neck hung a chain of silver links that seemed to hum faintly. His eyes were not red. They were gold. Gold like candlelight in a crypt. He smiled at me as if we were friends. Captain Vane, he said, voice smooth as oil. How gracious of you to visit. I tried to speak. My mouth wouldn't move. The mark in my chest burned. Oh, yes, he murmured, standing. He moved with lazy elegance, descending the steps as if the air carried him. You feel it, the thread, my little gift. I wanted to lunge. My body refused. He stopped an arm's length away. Up close, I smelled him. Spice, smoke, and something sweet that turned my stomach, like fruit left too long in a cellar. You must be confused, he said kindly. Humans always are when they learn their place in the tapestry. Let me explain. His fingers lifted and brushed the air near my chest, not touching skin, and yet the mark flared as if he had pressed a hot iron to it. Pain lanced through me. Stop, I tried to say, but it came out as a rasp. He chuckled. You cannot command me, but you may learn. His gaze drifted over me as if appraising livestock. Then he sighed, almost wistful. You are thinner than I expected, he said. Serapha has always been sentimental. The word sentimental sounded like an insult from him. My vision blurred, and in that blur I saw Serapha, kneeling at the foot of the throne, head bowed, hair spilling forward. The Lord's hand in her hair, gripping hard. She begged, he said softly, and his voice seemed to come from everywhere at once. Did you know that? She begged me to let you die properly. She begged me not to bind you. My stomach turned. She lies to you, he continued, tilting his head. She wants you to believe she is saving you, but she is saving herself. She is tired of being my blade. She wants a reason to break. His gold eyes narrowed. You will not give her that reason. I forced my mouth open. Why me? I croaked. Why bind me? He smiled again, the expression almost tender. Because you are not simply Alaric Vane, he said. You are Alaric of the Saint line. The words hit like ice. I had heard of the Saint line in half-forgotten sermons. A bloodline said to carry the last blessing of a martyr king. A line said to resist darkness. A line said to burn vampires from the inside if their blood touched it. Fairy tales to frighten children. My father had never spoken of saints. He had spoken of taxes and hunger and the cold. I'm not, I tried. You are, the Lord said, amused. Your mother kept it from you. Clever woman. Pointless but clever. My chest burned, the mark pulsing. And Serapha, he continued, voice softening, was supposed to bring you to me, alive, bound, so that I might test whether the saint line is real. His gaze sharpened. And she failed. A shadow passed over his face, and the air in the hall seemed to tighten. She is here, hiding you like a child hides stolen sweets, he murmured. She thinks she can delay what is inevitable. He leaned close, so close I could see the faint veins under his skin, the small beauty mark near his mouth. Listen to me, Alaric, he whispered, and the sound sank into my bones. When I find you, I will peel your devotion from your body. I will make you love me, and when I am done, you will thank me for it. Rage flared inside me like a match. For one heartbeat, the pain in my chest shifted. The mark flickered, faltering. The Lord's eyes widened slightly. Then he laughed, soft, delighted. Oh, he breathed. It is real. He lifted his hand and snapped his fingers. The hall dissolved into darkness. I woke gasping against the chapel wall, sweat cold on my skin despite the night air. My hands clawed at my chest, nails digging through bandages. The mark beneath them burned. I could still hear his voice. Saint Line, my mother, my father, all the years of being ordinary, lies. Serapha arrived that night to find me standing, sword drawn, eyes wild. You knew, I said before she could speak. She froze, bowl in hand. What? Your Lord spoke to me, I snarled. In my sleep, he said my bloodline is Saint Line? Serapha whispered, face going pale. The way she said it told me everything. You knew, I repeated, voice cracking. You knew and you didn't tell me. Serapha set the bowl down carefully, as if sudden movement might shatter the world. I did not know until the battle, she said. Until you said your name. You heard a prophecy. I spat. You connected it. You. Yes, she said, eyes bright with something like desperation. And I was terrified. Terrified of what? Serapha stepped closer, hands empty now, palms open. Terrified that my Lord would use you, she said, voice shaking. Terrified that he would tear your soul apart to see if your blood burns. Terrified that the prophecy is true. Terrified that you are the hinge that breaks us all. I laughed. Harsh. I'm a captain with a cracked breastplate. I'm nobody. You are somebody, she insisted. To him. To my house. And, she swallowed. And to me. The last words hung between us like a blade. My anger wavered. Not because it vanished, but because beneath it was something worse. Fear. If the Lord could reach me in my sleep, then hiding in ruins was not safety. It was delay. And delay was running out. We need to leave, I said, voice low. Serapha nodded once. Sharp. Yes. Where? Her gaze flicked toward the forest line. There is a place, she said. An old monastery. Abandoned. Consecrated ground still clings to it. My kind cannot enter easily. Will it block him? I asked. Serapha's jaw tightened. It may muffle him. For a time. A time. Always a time. I looked down at my sword, then at her. This vampire woman with blood on her neck and guilt in her eyes. You bound me, I said softly. You marked me. Yes. And now you're asking me to trust you. Her voice was a whisper. No. I am asking you to survive. I stared at her a long moment, then nodded once. All right, I said. We leave tonight. Serapha's shoulders loosened, the smallest release. Then she reached into her satchel and pulled out another cloth bundle. More food? I asked bitterly. No, she said. She unfolded it. Inside was my unit's insignia, my captain's brooch cleaned of blood, and beneath it, a dagger with a silvered edge. For him, she said. My throat tightened. You're giving me silver? I am giving you a chance, she replied. I took the dagger. The metal felt heavy with consequence. The battlefield behind us was turning into quiet ruins under moonlight. And somewhere in the dark, a lord with gold eyes was smiling, because he had found my name. We left the ruin before dawn because dawn was not safety, it was merely a different kind of danger. Vampires feared sunlight, yes, but the forest did not. Wolves did not. Men did not. And if House Valerin had sent hounds, they might send human thralls too, soldiers bought with coin or coerced with blood. Serapha moved through the trees like a shadow that had learned the paths by heart. She did not carry a torch. She did not need it. Her eyes tracked every branch, every shift in the mist. I stumbled behind her, biting back grunts of pain. My wound protested every step. The silver dagger bounced at my hip, a promise and a threat. You can't keep that pace, I rasped. Serapha stopped, turned, and looked at me with a calculation that made my skin prickle. Then she stepped closer and crouched. On my back, she said. My pride flared. Absolutely not. Her eyes narrowed. You will die if you refuse. I'd rather die than be carried like a child by a vampire. Serapha's mouth twitched, almost amused. Then die, she said flatly. The bluntness knocked the argument out of me. I hesitated, then stepped closer. As I climbed onto her back, her arms hooked under my thighs with a strength that made my face burn. Her body was cool but solid muscle under armor. The moment my chest pressed against her shoulder, the mark pulsed, and a wave of sensation rolled through me. Her focus, sharp as a blade. Her fear held tight like a secret, her determination like a vow. It was too intimate, too much. Don't look into me, she muttered, as if she could feel my reaction. Not now. I can't control it, I hissed. Yes, you can, she replied. Humans always say that. They are wrong. Then she ran. The forest blurred. Branches whipped past. The wind tore at my hair. Serapha's movements were smooth, silent, terrifyingly fast. For a moment, despite the fear, I felt something close to awe. She could have carried me anywhere. She could have delivered me to her lord in an hour. Instead, she carried me away. Halfway through the run, a sound sliced through the trees. A whistle, sharp and unnatural. Serapha halted so abruptly my teeth clicked. She lowered me behind a fallen log. Hound, she whispered. I drew the silver dagger, hands shaking. The air changed, thickened, as if something else had entered it. A smell drifted in, wet fur, iron, old blood. Then I saw him. He moved between trees like an animal wearing a man's shape. Tall, hunched, cloaked in dark leather. His face was pale, eyes red, but his mouth was wrong. Too wide, teeth too sharp. He sniffed the air like a wolf. Serapha stepped out from behind the log, hands empty, posture relaxed as if greeting an acquaintance. Rothan, she called softly. The hound's head snapped toward her. His grin widened, obscene. Captain Serapha, he purred. The Lord misses you. Serapha's voice was calm. Tell him I am busy. Rothan laughed. Busy feeding your little prize? The mark in my chest flared at the word prize, and I had to clamp my jaw to keep from making a sound. Rothan's nostrils flared. His gaze drifted toward my hiding place. There, he whispered. I smell him. I smell the thread. Serapha stepped sideways, blocking his line of sight. You will not take him. Rothan's grin sharpened. You don't decide that anymore. He lunged. Serapha met him with a speed that made my eyes blur. Her hand shot out, gripping his wrist, twisting until bone cracked. Rothan snarled, spinning, claws flashing. I leapt up, silver dagger raised. Rothan saw me and laughed even as Serapha slammed him into a tree. A human with silver, he mocked. How precious. He ripped free, moving too fast. His claws slashed across my shoulder. Pain exploded. I staggered. Serapha's roar, not human, shook the leaves. She drove her blade into Rothan's side, but he twisted, avoiding the heart. Rothan lunged at her neck, her already wounded neck, and I saw with sick clarity that he was aiming for the bandage, to rip it away, to taste her blood, to claim her. Something inside me snapped. Not courage, not heroism, possession, no, maybe simply refusal. I drove the silver dagger into Rothan's back. He screamed, "Hi, animal," and the smell of burning flesh hit my nose. He whirled, claws reaching for me, but Serapha was already there, slicing his throat with a clean, brutal cut. Rothan fell, gurgling black blood, hands clawing at the ground. He didn't die immediately. Vampires seldom did. He stared up at Serapha, eyes wide with shock. "You," he rasped. "You chose him." Serapha's face was stone. "I chose myself," she said. Then she drove her blade into his heart. Rothan convulsed, then went still. The forest held its breath. I stood shaking, dagger in hand, blood dripping from my shoulder. Serapha turned to me, eyes blazing. Not with hunger, but with something fierce and wounded. "You used silver," she said. "I had to," I panted. She stepped closer. Her gaze dropped to my bleeding shoulder. The mark pulsed, and I felt her hunger rise, sharp and sudden, triggered by the scent of blood. Serapha's jaw clenched. She looked away, forcing herself to breathe. Unnecessary, but calming. "Can you walk?" she asked, voice tight. "Not far," I admitted. She hesitated only a moment, then crouched again. "On my back," she said. This time I didn't argue. As she lifted me, the mark pulsed and I felt her fear spike. Not fear of me, fear of what she'd just done. Killing Rothan meant the Lord would know. The chase was no longer theoretical. We ran deeper into the forest, leaving behind a dead hound and the first undeniable proof that whatever bond existed between us had become more than survival. I had stabbed a vampire to save the vampire who had tried to kill me, and somewhere in the distance, I imagined Gold Eyes narrowing, amused. The monastery rose from the forest like an accusation. It was older than my kingdom, older than the wars that had shaped my life. Stone walls leaned under ivy and thyme. The roof had partially collapsed, exposing rafters like ribs. A bell tower stood crooked, empty of bell. Yet when we crossed the threshold of its outer courtyard, the air changed. The mark in my chest cooled slightly, as if soothed. Serapha halted at the gate, her posture suddenly tense. "You can't enter," I realized. "I can," she said, voice strained. "But it burns." "Then don't." Her red eyes flicked to me. "If I don't, you will be alone." "I've been alone," I said bitterly. Serapha's mouth tightened. "Not like this." She stepped forward. The moment her boot crossed onto the courtyard stone, smoke rose faintly from the edge of her soul. She hissed, shoulders tightening, but she kept walking. I watched, sickened, as the consecration bit into her like acid. "Stop," I said. "We'll find another place." "No," she snapped. "This is the only place near enough with remaining blessing." She reached the broken doorway and stopped, breathing hard, eyes bright with pain. She leaned against the stone as if it held her up. I moved toward her, forgetting myself, and caught her arm. The instant my hand touched her, the mark flared, but instead of flooding me with her fear, it flooded me with her pain, sharp and hot, like fire under skin. I recoiled. Serapha's face twisted. "Now you understand," she rasped. "Every step is—" She didn't finish. She pushed herself upright and stepped inside the monastery. The interior smelled of dust and old incense. Broken pews lay scattered. The altar had collapsed. Faded murals of saints watched with cracked eyes. Serapha sank to one knee near the center aisle, trembling. I stood awkwardly, sword in hand, unsure what to do with her suffering. "You didn't have to," I said. Yes, she whispered. I did. Why? She laughed, breathless. Still that question. I deserve an answer. Serapha's gaze lifted slowly. Her eyes were red, but the pain made them look almost human. You want to know why I bring you food, she said. Why I didn't kill you. Why I bleed for you. I nodded. Serapha's hands clenched. Because when I marked you, she said, I should have felt power, ownership, victory. Her voice shook. Instead I felt emptiness, a hollowness I have carried since the chapel where I died. And then you said your name, and something in me, something old, something that remembers being human, woke up and screamed. She swallowed, eyes shining. I did not want you as a trophy, she whispered. I wanted you as proof that I could still choose not to be a monster. The words were a knife and a bomb. I sat down hard on a broken pew, breath shaky. You chose by marking me, I said. Serapha flinched. Yes. The truth was bitter. Her attempt at goodness had still violated me. And yet, without that violation, I would be dead. The monastery's silence pressed in around us, filled with dust motes drifting in moonlight. Outside, somewhere in the forest, something howled. A long, mournful sound. Serapha's head snapped up, eyes narrowing. Not a wolf, she murmured. My stomach dropped. Another hound? No, she said softly. Worse. She rose slowly, pain making her movements rigid. He knows, she whispered. He knows where we are. The mark in my chest pulsed, and in that pulse I felt a faint echo of gold-eyed amusement. Then a voice slid into my mind like smoke. There you are. I doubled over, clutching my chest. Serapha grabbed my shoulders, eyes wide. Alaric, and you brought her into holy stone. The voice purred. How delicious. The monastery darkened, as if the moonlight had been dimmed by an invisible hand. Serapha bared her teeth, a snarl that was half despair. He's here, she hissed. Here, I gasped. In the monastery? Not physically, she said, but his will, his thread. The air grew colder. Candles that didn't exist seemed to flicker in the corners of my vision. A shadow formed near the ruined altar, coalescing into a figure. Tall, elegant, gold eyes glowing like lanterns in fog. Not fully real. Projection. A dream made visible. The Lord of House Valerin smiled. Serapha, he said warmly, as if greeting a beloved child. You look tired. Serapha stepped in front of me, sword drawn, though her hand shook from consecration burns. My lord, she said, voice like broken glass. He tilted his head. You have been naughty. Serapha's jaw clenched. I will not return. The Lord sighed, almost disappointed. Oh, you will, he said, because you belong to me, and because you have already given me what I wanted. His gold eyes drifted past her to me. The saint line, he murmured. How fortunate. My chest burned. The mark pulsed violently. Serapha snarled. You cannot take him. The Lord smiled. I already have, he said softly. Through the thread you placed. Through the blood you shared. Serapha's face went white. She whispered, horror dawning. No. Oh, yes, he purred. Every time he touches you, every time he tastes your fear, I taste it too. You have built me a bridge. Serapha stumbled, as if struck. I stared at her, the realization crashing down. The bond wasn't just between us. It was a conduit, path, a way for her Lord to reach me, and perhaps to reach her, even through consecrated ground. Serapha's voice broke. I didn't know. The Lord laughed softly. Of course you didn't. That's why you're so useful. He lifted his hand, and the air around Serapha shimmered. She cried out, dropping to her knees, clutching her head as if something inside her skull had been squeezed. I lunged forward, silver dagger drawn, but my body froze. The mark flared, and my limbs locked. The Lord looked at me with gentle amusement. Sit, he said, and I did. My muscles obeyed him, not me. Terror clawed through my ribs. Serapha looked up at me, eyes wild, and in them I saw a question and an apology and a plea all at once. The Lord stepped closer, his projection gliding over broken stone. "Now," he murmured, "let us see what happens when saint blood meets vampiric thread." He reached toward my chest. The mark burned like wildfire, and somewhere deep inside me, something answered. Not submission, not obedience. Something old, something angry, something that had been sleeping in my blood. I don't know what the saint line truly is. I only know what it felt like when it woke. The Lord's hand hovered inches from my chest, and the mark flared so bright it felt like my ribs were transparent. My skin heated, then cooled, then heated again like breath on a forge. In the instant his fingers should have touched me, pain spiked, not from the mark, but from somewhere deeper, as if my blood had grown thorns. The Lord's smile faltered, his gold eyes narrowed. "Oh," he murmured, intrigued. "There it is." He pressed forward anyway. The moment he made contact, if contact it was, through projection and thread, light exploded inside me. Not visible light, but a pressure, a brightness behind the eyes. I heard a sound, like a bell struck underwater. The monastery walls seemed to hum. The Lord jerked back sharply, as if burned. His expression shifted from amusement to irritation. Serapha, still kneeling, gasped. The pressure around her head loosened. She looked at me, eyes wide. "You," she whispered. I staggered to my feet, limbs shaking, fighting the lingering command. The mark on my chest was scorching now, but the heat felt mine, controlled in a strange way. The Lord's projection flickered, shadows wavering around his form. "You are stubborn," he said softly, almost admiring. "Your blood resists. How delightful. Get out of my head," I rasped. He laughed. "You think it is your head?" he purred. "No, Alaric. It is her blood that opened the door. It is her sin that invited me in." Serapha's face twisted, guilt and fury mingling. "Leave him," she snarled. The Lord glanced at her with mild contempt. "You," he said, "have disappointed me." Serapha rose slowly, sword shaking in her hand. "I will kill you," she whispered. The Lord smiled. "No," he said, voice gentle. "You won't." Serapha froze mid-step, her body locking like mine had. Her eyes widened in horror as her muscles betrayed her. The Lord's gaze slid to me. "And you," he murmured, "will watch." The mark flared, trying to seize me again. But the saint blood, whatever it was, pushed back. My limbs trembled, caught between two wills. I forced my hand toward the silver dagger at my belt, inch by inch. The Lord noticed, eyes narrowing. He lifted his hand, and the air thickened like syrup. "Enough," he said. The pressure increased. My knees buckled. Serapha's eyes met mine, helpless. And in that moment, the bond between us, the tether she'd created, became something else. Not just conduit, not just chain. A choice. I reached for her through the mark, not with hands but with will. Fumbling, human, desperate. I felt her fear, yes, her guilt, her pain. But I also felt something I hadn't fully recognized before. Her refusal. A hard, bright refusal that had kept her from breaking for a century. And I grabbed onto it like a rope. The mark pulsed. The bell sound rang again, stronger. The Lord's projection shuddered, shadows tearing at the edges. He snarled, his first truly ugly expression. "Serapha," he hissed. "What have you done?" Serapha's mouth opened, but no sound came. His command still held her throat. I used the moment of his distraction to move just enough. I yanked the silver dagger free and drove it into my own chest, directly into the glowing mark. Pain exploded, white-hot, blinding. Serapha screamed, finally able to, because the bond transmitted it to her too. The monastery rang with the bell sound, deafening now. The Lord recoiled as if struck. His projection cracked, fissures of light splitting shadow. "You fool!" he roared, voice no longer smooth. "You'll kill yourself. Better than—" I gasped, blood flooding my mouth. Than being yours. The silver burned. The mark flared, then sputtered like a dying ember. Serapha lunged forward despite her pain, hands catching me as I collapsed. Her face was inches from mine, red eyes wide with panic. Why? She choked. Would you do that? I coughed, tasting iron. To close the door, I rasped. The Lord's projection flickered wildly now, as if held together by anger alone. He glared at Serapha. You will bring him to me, he snarled. You will crawl back, and you will beg. Go, Serapha hissed, voice shaking with fury. Go back to your throne and choke on your own arrogance. The Lord's eyes narrowed, then softened into something colder than rage. This is not over, he whispered. The thread is cut, but the blood remains. You have marked him with Valerin. You have marked yourself with treason. His projection dissolved into smoke, sucked into the cracks of the monastery like darkness fleeing light. Silence slammed down. I lay in Serapha's arms, bleeding, shaking. She pressed her hands to my chest, trying to stop the blood, her fingers trembling now. Vampire composure shattered. You are dying, she whispered. Not yet, I gasped. Serapha's eyes darted around the ruined monastery, frantic. I can heal you, she said, voice breaking. But what? I rasped. Her jaw clenched. My blood, she whispered. More of it. It will bind you again, unless the consecration, unless your saint blood. Do it, I croaked. Serapha stared at me, horror and longing warring. You don't know what you're asking, she whispered. I'm asking to live, I said, voice raw. And I'm asking you to choose. Serapha's throat worked. Then slowly she nodded. She leaned down and bit her own wrist. Dark blood welled, thick and almost black. She pressed the bleeding cut to my lips. The smell hit me, iron, wine, winter apples. I hesitated only a heartbeat. Then I drank. Heat surged through me, but not like before. Not like the mark. This was deeper, flooding veins, igniting nerves. Serapha shuddered, eyes squeezing shut, as if feeling it too. The wound on my chest burned, then knit, flesh pulling together with a nauseating tug. My vision blurred. In that blur, I saw Serapha's face. Young, human, defiant, kneeling on marble. I saw her die. I saw her wake screaming. And I saw, threaded through all those memories, a single bright point of stubbornness that had kept her from becoming her lord's hollow puppet. When my vision cleared, my wound was closed. The silver dagger lay on the stone beside us, slick with my blood. Serapha sat back, breathing hard, her wrist healing slowly. We stared at each other in the monastery's quiet, the air still humming faintly with the bell sound's aftertaste. The tether mark was gone, but something else remained. A warmth beneath my skin. Not command, not chain, connection. Serapha's voice was a whisper. We are bound anyway, she said. I swallowed, throat burning. Yes, I whispered back. But this time you chose it. We stayed in the monastery for 3 days. Not because it was safe, nothing was safe now, but because my body needed time to catch up with the impossible healing Serapha's blood had forced into it. I slept hard, waking with sweat and strange dreams. The dreams were no longer the Lord's voice. They were Serapha's memories. Fragmented, haunting, sometimes tender. A riverbank where she had once laughed as a human girl. A winter night where she had stood on a battlement, watching snow fall, and for a moment forgot she couldn't feel its cold properly. A ballroom filled with vampires, music like a slow knife, her smile practiced, her eyes dead, and always, beneath every memory, chains. Some forged by her house, some forged by her own guilt. On the second day, I woke to find her sitting near a broken stained glass window, watching dust motes drift in light. She looked smaller somehow. Not physically, but in posture. Like she'd set down a weapon she'd carried too long. You're awake, she said quietly. I sat up, wincing at lingering soreness. I'm alive. Yes, she murmured, and her voice held relief she didn't try to hide. I studied her. Why didn't you run? I asked. After the Lord left, you could have vanished. Serapha's gaze stayed on the light. And leave you? She asked softly. After I fed you my blood? Yes. She turned her head slightly, red eyes catching the glow. I have left people before, she said. It is easy. You tell yourself they were already lost. You tell yourself you did what you could. You tell yourself you are not responsible for what happens after you walk away. Her voice tightened. I am tired of telling myself lies. Silence settled between us. On the third day, she hunted quietly, unwilling to bring blood inside consecrated walls. She returned with a rabbit and herbs. She cooked outside in a small fire pit, keeping the smoke low. A vampire cooking stew for a human on monastery ground. It should have been absurd. Instead, it felt like the only sane thing in a world that had gone mad. That night, as we ate, I asked the question that had been circling my mind like a crow. What does your blood do to me now? I asked. Am I changing? Serapha's hands paused on the bowl. Yes, she said. My stomach clenched. Into what? She hesitated. Not into a vampire, she said quickly. Not unless you die and I complete the turning. Then what? Serapha exhaled. It will sharpen you, she said. Your senses, your healing, your resistance to compulsion, especially mine, especially Valerin's. So I'm a weapon now, I said bitterly. Serapha's gaze snapped up. No, she said fiercely. You are a person, and that is why this is dangerous. Dangerous to who? To you, she said, because power changes what you think you deserve. It changes what you think others deserve. I swallowed. And to you. Serapha's voice softened. To me because I will feel you, sometimes, in fragments, and I have spent a century training myself not to feel humans. Her honesty hit like a bruise. I set my bowl aside. Serapha, I said quietly, look at me. She hesitated, then did. In her gaze I saw exhaustion, guilt, fear, and something else, something fragile like hope. What happens next? I asked. Serapha's mouth tightened. We run, she said, or we fight. We can't fight House Valerin alone. Serapha's eyes narrowed. No, she admitted. We cannot. I thought of my kingdom, my crown, my men. Were any of them alive? Would they believe me if I returned claiming prophecy and vampire lords? Then I thought of my mother, a woman who had kept secrets deep enough to change my life without my knowing. You said my mother hid my bloodline, I said slowly. How would your lord know? Serapha's jaw clenched. Because House Valerin has spies, she said. In courts, in churches, in beds. The image made my skin crawl. If my mother is alive, I said, she might know something. About Saint Line. About how to break vampire threads. Serapha studied me. You want to return to human lands? Yes, I said. I want answers. And I want allies. Serapha's gaze dropped. And what do you want from me? The question was careful, almost afraid. I stared at her, the vampire woman who had stabbed me and fed me and bled for me. I want you, I said, then hated how it sounded. Too raw, too possessive. Serapha's eyes widened. I corrected myself, forcing steadiness. I want you to come, I said. If you'll have me, not as captor, not as savior, as partner. Serapha's throat bobbed. She looked away, jaw tight, as if fighting tears she couldn't afford. I have never been anyone's partner, she whispered. Then we start now, I said. She laughed softly, broken. You are reckless. I'm alive, I replied. It's my newest habit. Serapha's gaze returned to mine. Slowly, she nodded. All right, she said. We go to your mother. The next morning we left the monastery. The forest was quieter than before, as if listening. As we walked, Serapha stayed close. Not touching, but near enough that I felt her presence like warmth at my side. We were not friends. Not lovers. Not yet. We were two creatures marked by the same war, carrying blood that did not belong together, choosing to walk the same path anyway. And that choice, the simple, stubborn act of walking forward, felt like the first true rebellion either of us had ever made. We reached human lands by dusk 2 days later, moving through back paths and forgotten roads, avoiding villages where frightened eyes might see Serapha's pale face and scream. The first time we heard church bells from a distance, Serapha flinched so hard she nearly drew her sword. "It's only sound," I murmured. "It is not only sound," she replied. "It is memory." We approached my childhood village, Harrowmere, under low clouds and thin rain. The fields were empty, harvested early. Smoke rose from chimneys, but it was cautious smoke, as if even fire feared being seen. War had made everything smaller. My mother's house sat at the edge of the village, a modest stone cottage with a garden that had once been neat. Now weeds choked the beds. The door looked newer, reinforced. I stopped at the gate, heart pounding. What if she was dead? What if she had fled? What if she opened the door and saw me beside a vampire and called the village to burn us both? Serapha watched me, silent. "You don't have to come inside," I said. Her red eyes flicked to the cottage, then back to me. "Yes," she said. "I do." I pushed the gate open, creaked like a complaint. We crossed the muddy yard. I lifted my hand to knock. The door swung open before my knuckles touched wood. My mother stood there, a lantern in her hand, gray hair pulled back, face lined deeper than I remembered, and in her other hand, a crossbow. She aimed it directly at my chest. "Alaric," she said, voice steady. "Step back. Slowly." "Mother," I whispered, stunned. Her gaze flicked past me to Serapha. The crossbow did not waver. "And you," she said, voice turning sharp. "Not one step closer." Serapha raised her hands slowly, palms open. "I am not here to harm you," she said. My mother's laugh was bitter. "They all say that." I stepped forward anyway, ignoring the bolt. "Mother, it's me," I said. "I'm wounded. I need." Her eyes narrowed, scanning my face, my cracked armor, the dried blood. Then something softened, just a fraction. "Alaric," she whispered, the crossbow lowering slightly. "They said you were dead." "I was almost," I said. "And this is Serapha." My mother's gaze sharpened again. "A vampire." "Yes," I admitted. The lantern light flickered, casting shadows across her face. "You brought her here," she said softly. "To my door. I need answers," I said, voice breaking. "About Saint Line." At the words, my mother went still. The crossbow lowered completely, her face drained of color. "Inside," she said hoarsely. "Both of you." Quickly. We entered, and she barred the door with a practiced motion. The cottage smelled of dried herbs and old wood. My mother set the lantern on the table and stared at me as if I was a ghost. Then she slapped me, hard. The sound cracked through the room like a whip. I blinked, stunned. "Idiot," she hissed, eyes filling with tears she refused to let fall. "Stupid, stubborn. Do you have any idea what you've done?" "I came home," I said, voice shaking. "You came home with her?" My mother snapped, glaring at Serapha. Serapha stood rigid, hands clasped in front of her. "I will leave if you command it," she said quietly. My mother's gaze lingered on Serapha's face, then dropped to the bandage at her neck, the faint burns on her boots. "You entered my home without invitation," my mother said. Serapha's eyes lowered. "Yes, and you didn't attack," my mother murmured, almost to herself. She turned to me, voice harsh. "Saint Line is not a bedtime story," she said. "It is a curse disguised as blessing." I swallowed. "So it's real." My mother's eyes closed briefly. "Yes." She moved to a cupboard, opened it, and pulled out a small wooden box. She set it on the table and opened it. Inside was a pendant, a simple silver disc etched with the same crescent and stroke symbol that had been on my chest. My breath caught. My mother touched the pendant with trembling fingers. "Your father never knew," she whispered. "He would have tried to protect you with sword and pride. Those things do not protect you from old magic." She looked up at me, eyes bright with grief. "I prayed you would be ordinary," she said. "I prayed you would live a simple life and die old." Serapha's gaze flicked to the pendant, then to my mother. "That symbol," she said softly. "It is the saint's seal." My mother's eyes narrowed. "You know it." Serapha nodded once. "House Valerin fears it," she said, "and covets it." My mother's lips pressed thin. "Of course they do," she muttered. Then she looked at Serapha sharply. "Why is he alive?" Serapha hesitated. "Because I fed him," she admitted. My mother stiffened, crossbow hand twitching toward instinct. I stepped between them. "She saved me," I said. My mother's eyes flashed. "By binding you to her blood." "Yes," I said. "And it cut the Lord's thread when I used silver." My mother's expression shifted, fear, recognition. "Valerin found you," she whispered. "Yes," I said. My mother sat down hard, as if her legs had finally admitted exhaustion. "I tried to hide you," she said. "I married your father for love, yes, but also because his name would bury yours. I moved here because no one cares about Harrowmere." She looked at Serapha, voice low. "And now they have you anyway." Serapha's jaw clenched. "Yes." My mother's gaze returned to me, and it was so full of sorrow it made my throat close. "You're not just Saint Line," she whispered. "You are the last." The words hit like a burial. "What?" I croaked. My mother nodded, tears finally spilling. "The others were hunted," she said. "Burned, bound, broken. The church pretended it was purging heresy. The crown pretended it was politics. But it was vampires. Always vampires." Serapha's face went pale. "Your lord," she whispered. "He's been hunting saints for centuries." My mother's voice was bitter. "Because saint blood burns vampire magic. It breaks threads. It makes them mortal in small ways." I stared at my hands, at the faint warmth under my skin where Serapha's blood now lived alongside mine. "What do we do?" I whispered. My mother looked at Serapha again, long and searching. Then she did something I never expected. She bowed her head slightly to the vampire. "Thank you," she said, voice tight, "for bringing my son back." Serapha looked shocked, as if gratitude was a language she'd forgotten. "I did not do it for your thanks," she murmured. "I know," my mother said, and her voice softened. "You did it for his life." Serapha's gaze flicked to me, then away again, almost shy. My mother inhaled shakily. "If Valerin knows you're alive, he will come," she said. "Not with a projection. With an army." Serapha's voice was flat. "Yes." My mother opened the box again and pulled out a small bundle of parchment. Old, cracked. "Then we prepare," she said. She slid the parchments toward me. "They are prayers," she said. "Not to gods, to blood, to lineage, to the stubborn piece of light that refuses to die." I reached for them with shaking hands. Serapha watched, silent. And in the lantern light, in my mother's small cottage, the war suddenly shifted shape. It was no longer just armies clashing. It was an old hunt resuming, and I was no longer just a captain. I was prey with teeth. They came before midnight, not as a silent shadow, not as a whisper in dreams, as fire. The first sign was the dogs barking, wild, panicked. Then the distant scream of a horse. Then a bell rung too hard, too fast. My mother was already awake. Parchment spread on the table, candlelight trembling over ink. Serapha stood near the window, watching the dark like it owed her money. I had my sword and silver dagger, hands still stiff from healing. Then the first house at the edge of Harrowmere went up in flames. Orange light bloomed against the rain like a wound reopening. My mother's face went gray. "Too fast," she whispered. They found us too fast. Serapha's eyes narrowed. He followed the blood, she said. Outside, voices shouted, men, human men. Not vampire shrieks. Thralls. Soldiers. The sound of boots in mud. A fist slammed into my mother's door. Open, a voice bellowed. By order of the crown. My mother laughed bitterly. Lies, she hissed. Another slam. The door frame rattled. Serapha turned to me, eyes fierce. Do not let them take you alive, she said. I won't, I replied, though fear made my stomach twist. My mother thrust a small vial into my hand. Salt and ash, she said. Throw it in their eyes. It won't stop vampires, but it will blind men. The door splintered. 3 men surged inside. Muddy cloaks, swords drawn, eyes too bright, too empty. Thralls. Behind them, in the doorway's shadow, stood a vampire. Tall, pale, wearing House Valerin's black and crimson. Not the Lord. Another blade. Serapha, the vampire called, voice mocking. You've made such a mess. Serapha stepped forward, sword raised. Leave, she hissed. The vampire laughed. The Lord wants the saint, he purred. And he wants you alive, to explain your tantrum. One of the thralls lunged at me. I threw the ash vial into his face. He screamed, clawing at his eyes. I slammed my sword hilt into another thrall's jaw, feeling bone crack. He dropped. The third swung at my mother, old but fierce, and Serapha moved like lightning, cutting the man down before his blade could reach her. My mother stared at the dead thrall, chest heaving. Gods, she whispered. The vampire in the doorway smiled. See, he said. She kills humans as easily as breathing. She is not your ally. Serapha's jaw clenched. I stepped forward, blood roaring in my ears. Get out, I snarled. The vampire's eyes flicked to me, red and amused. Ah, he murmured. The saintling speaks. He moved fast, too fast. I barely raised my sword in time. The impact rattled my arms. He was stronger than any human. But I felt something else now. Speed in my muscles, clarity in my senses, the warmth of Serapha's blood sharpening me. I parried, stepped inside, drove the silver dagger toward his ribs. He twisted away, hissing as the silver grazed him. Smoke rose from the cut. His eyes widened. You've been fed, he snarled, gaze snapping to Serapha. You stupid. Serapha attacked him, blade flashing. He retreated out the door, laughing even as he bled. You cannot hide forever, he called. The village will burn. The Lord will have his saint. Outside, screams rose as fire spread. My mother grabbed my arm. We have to leave, she hissed. I looked at the flames through the window, at neighbors running with buckets, at shadows moving too fast among them. Where? I demanded. My mother's gaze was grim. The old catacombs under Greyfen Chapel, she said. Where you first woke. There's a sealed reliquary. If we can reach it. Serapha's eyes narrowed. Consecrated ground. My mother nodded. Stronger than the monastery, she said. Older. Serapha looked at me. It will burn me, she murmured. I know, I said, voice tight. My mother grabbed a cloak, threw it around her shoulders, then tossed another to me. We go now, she said. We fled through the back door into rain and smoke. The village was chaos. Flames licking roofs, men shouting, thralls dragging villagers from houses. I saw a child crying near a burning cart, and Serapha moved toward him instinctively. Then she froze, eyes widening. A shadow dropped from the roof in front of her. A vampire, slender, pale, eyes red, smiling. Serapha, she purred. Still playing human? Serapha's face tightened. Lyanna, she hissed. The vampire woman, Lyanna, tilted her head, gaze flicking to me with interest. Is that him? She asked. The saint. I raised my sword, heart hammering. Lina laughed softly. "Oh, you poor things," she said. "Do you think running will save you?" She lunged. Serapha met her, blades clashing, sparks flying even in rain. Their speed was terrifying, two crimson shadows fighting in firelight. My mother grabbed my sleeve. "Move!" she shouted. I wanted to help Serapha, but another thrall rushed me. I cut him down, then another. My sword arm burned. Serapha cried out, Lina's blade slicing her shoulder. Dark blood sprayed. Rage surged in me. I drove the silver dagger into Lina's side as she passed, and she screamed, smoke rising. Lina whirled, eyes blazing. "Saint Blood!" she snarled. Serapha used the moment to slam her sword through Lina's thigh, pinning her briefly to a fence post. Lina hissed, teeth bared, then ripped free with a sickening sound. "You will regret this," she spat, and vanished into smoke and rain. Serapha staggered, clutching her bleeding shoulder. I grabbed her arm. "Can you run?" She nodded, jaw tight. "Yes." We ran through burning Harrowmere, rain hissing against flames, the smell of smoke mixing with blood. Behind us, the village that had raised me screamed and died. I didn't cry. Not then. I couldn't afford it. But inside, something broke loose, something that had been held back by duty and pride. A vow. If House Valerin wanted a saint, I would give them one. Not as prey, as ruin. Greyfen Chapel was no longer a chapel. It was a scar. The stone walls still stood, but blackened. The roof had collapsed entirely, leaving the interior open to sky. The battlefield around it was quieter now, though bones still gleamed pale in the mud. We reached it near dawn, soaked and exhausted. Serapha's shoulder wound bled slowly, silvered cut refusing to close. My mother limped, smoke-stung, but her eyes were hard as flint. She led us to a trapdoor beneath the shattered altar stones, hidden old. "This way," she whispered. We descended into darkness. The catacombs smelled of damp earth and old incense. Narrow corridors lined with niches. Skulls watched from shadows. My torch flickered, throwing uneven light over carved saints whose faces had been worn smooth by time and touch. Serapha moved carefully, each step on consecrated stone making her jaw clench. Smoke rose faintly from her boots again, but she did not stop. My mother guided us deeper until we reached a sealed door of iron etched with prayer script. She pressed her palm to it and murmured words I didn't recognize. The iron shuddered, then clicked. The door swung open. Inside was a small chamber, a reliquary. At its center, on a stone pedestal, lay a simple wooden box bound in silver. My mother approached with reverence, hands shaking. She opened the box. Inside was a bone. Not large. A finger, perhaps, wrapped in cloth embroidered with faded gold. Serapha stared, eyes wide. "A saint's relic," she whispered. My mother nodded. "Saint King Edric," she said. "The one who died to bind the first vampire lord." My breath caught. "This is real." My mother's gaze was grim. "Real enough that Valerin fears it," she said. Serapha stepped closer, pain etched into her face. "If this relic is here," she murmured, "then Greyfen was not chosen by chance." "No," my mother agreed. "It was chosen because the blessing here is strong. It's why your wound didn't rot too quickly. It's why the Lord's projection cracked." I stared at the relic, at the absurdity of a bone being our shield. "What do we do with it?" I asked. My mother looked at Serapha. "Can you endure holding it?" Serapha hesitated. "It will burn," she admitted. "But, yes." My mother turned to me. "And you," she said softly, "if you carry it, your blood will resonate. It may awaken fully." My stomach tightened. "Awaken into what?" My mother's eyes were sad. "Into the thing they fear," she said, "and the thing the church once worshipped." Serapha's gaze snapped to my mother. "What does it do?" she demanded. My mother swallowed. "It makes the saint blood active," she said. "It can sever vampire threads, weaken compulsion, make their flesh vulnerable." Serapha's jaw clenched. "A weapon," she said. "A defense my mother countered. Then she looked at me. And sometimes, it makes saints cruel. I stared at her. Cruel. My mother nodded slowly. Light can burn as easily as darkness, she whispered. Saints have done terrible things believing they were righteous. The warning lodged in my chest. I thought of the vow I'd made in the burning village. Ruin. Was that righteousness? Or vengeance? Serapha stepped closer, her voice low. Alaric, she said, do not let them make you into another monster. I met her gaze, and in her red eyes I saw fear. Not for herself, but for me. I swallowed. Then stay with me, I said. Remind me I'm human. Serapha's lips parted, as if surprised by the trust. My mother lifted the relic carefully, wrapping it in cloth again, then placed it into my hands. The moment my skin touched the cloth-wrapped bone, heat surged through my veins. Not painful, not yet. More like a sudden clarity, a bell ringing inside my blood. I inhaled sharply. Serapha's eyes widened. Alaric, my vision sharpened. I could hear water dripping far down the corridor. I could smell Serapha's blood beneath her bandage, the iron sweetness of it. I could feel the consecration in the stone like a low hum. And beneath it all, I could feel something else. Threads. Invisible lines stretching outward, faint but present, like spider silk. Vampire magic. Bindings. Control. And as I held the relic, those threads trembled, as if afraid. My mother watched me with sorrow. It's awake, she whispered. I clenched my fist around the relic. Outside the catacombs, I knew House Valerin would be gathering. The Lord would come. But now, for the first time since the battle, I felt something that wasn't fear. I felt readiness. The night before the Lord arrived, we waited in the catacombs. My mother slept fitfully, clutching her crossbow. Serapha sat awake, back against stone, eyes fixed on darkness. I held the relic in my lap. It hummed faintly, like a distant choir. Serapha's shoulder wound bled slowly. I wanted to help, but touching her now, with relic in hand, might burn her. Still, I couldn't stop staring. You're in pain, I murmured. Serapha's gaze flicked to me. Pain is familiar, she said. I'm sorry, I whispered. She laughed softly. For what? She asked. For being alive? For not dying obediently? For what you've endured, I said. Serapha's eyes softened, then hardened again. Do not romanticize it, she said. It was not noble. I did terrible things to survive. I know, I said quietly. Serapha's jaw clenched. Do you? She asked. Do you know what it is to hold someone down while another feeds? To burn villages because your lord demands fear? To smile at courts while humans scream in cellars beneath? Her voice shook with contained fury, and the bond between us pulsed, her shame spilling into me like poison. I flinched. Stop, I whispered. Serapha froze, eyes wide. I didn't mean, I swallowed. I mean stop punishing yourself in front of me like it will absolve you. Serapha stared at me, stunned. I'm not your priest, I continued, voice low. And I'm not your judge. I'm the man you spared, the man you marked. The words tasted bitter. Serapha's gaze dropped. Yes, I exhaled, feeling the relic's hum in my bones. You did monstrous things, I said. So have I. Humans call it war when we do it. Serapha's eyes lifted slowly. I killed men who begged, I admitted. I burned crops so enemy villages would starve. I told myself it was duty. I told myself it wasn't personal. My throat tightened. But when Harrowmere burned, it became personal. And I felt joy at the thought of ruin. Serapha's expression softened into something aching. You are afraid of yourself, she whispered. Yes, I said. And I think that makes me like you. Serapha's mouth trembled, almost a smile, then vanished. Silence stretched. Then she said, very quietly, Alaric, what are you to me? The question struck deep. I stared at the relic at my hands. I don't know, I admitted. You're my enemy, my savior, my captor. My voice faltered. My mirror, I finished. He arrived at dusk the next day. Not with trumpets, not with banners, with silence. The battlefield above the catacombs went still, as if even wind feared to move. Then the threads in my blood, those invisible lines I could sense now, tightened, like strings pulled taut. Serapha rose immediately, sword in hand, eyes blazing. My mother loaded her crossbow with trembling hands. I held the relic, feeling it hum harder, like a heart preparing to strike. Footsteps echoed down the catacomb stairs, slow, confident. A figure appeared at the top of the steps, framed by twilight. The Lord of House Valerin, in flesh. He wore black armor this time, lacquered with crimson lining. His hair was dark, his eyes gold, and his smile was the same gentle cruelty as in my dream. Behind him came Lyanna, her side still scarred from silver burns, eyes furious. And behind her, thralls, human men with empty eyes, carrying torches that dripped smoke. The Lord descended, step by step, as if walking into his own home. Alaric, he said warmly, and Serapha, and... His gaze slid to my mother with mild curiosity. The broodmare. My mother flinched as if slapped, but lifted her crossbow anyway. Serapha snarled. Leave her out of this. The Lord chuckled. Oh, but she is the beginning, he purred. And you are the middle. And he... His gaze returned to me, eyes gleaming. He is the end. I lifted the relic slightly. The saint blood hum in my veins rose, answering. The Lord's smile faltered for the briefest moment. Ah, he murmured. So the bone still sings. He stepped closer, ignoring Serapha's sword and my mother's crossbow as if they were toys. Do you know what saints are, Alaric? He asked softly. They are not heroes. They are instruments. They are hammers. And when you are a hammer, everything looks like something to crush. I clenched my jaw. The Lord tilted his head. Serapha kissed you, didn't she? He asked, almost conversational. Serapha stiffened. My stomach dropped. Lyanna laughed cruelly. Disgusting, she spat. The Lord's gold eyes gleamed. Such intimacy, he purred. Such foolishness. Do you think love will save you? Serapha stepped forward, sword raised. It won't, she hissed. But it will make me kill you without hesitation. The Lord sighed, almost fond. My dear, he said, you cannot kill me. You were made by my bloodline. You are my property. Serapha's eyes flared. No. The Lord lifted his hand, and the air around Serapha tightened. She froze, muscles locking, eyes wide with rage. My rage surged too, but the relic hummed, and the saint blood answered. I stepped forward, gripping the relic hard. Let her go, I snarled. The Lord's gaze snapped to me, eyes narrowing. Or what? He asked softly. I felt the threads, his compulsion reaching toward me like a hand. I pushed back, focusing on the relic's hum, on the bell sound memory. Or I burn your threads, I said. The Lord smiled slowly, delighted. Yes, he whispered. Show me. He extended his will toward me. Pain flared in my chest. But I held the relic up and spoke words from my mother's parchment. Half remembered, half instinctual. By blood that refuses night, I rasped. By bone that remembers light. The relic blazed. A wave of heat burst outward, invisible but palpable. The torches flickered wildly. The thralls screamed, clutching their heads as if something in their minds snapped. Serapha gasped, her body unlocking, dropping to one knee, eyes wide. The Lord staggered back a step. For the first time, his smile vanished completely. His gold eyes flashed with anger. You dare, he hissed. Lyanna lunged at me, blade raised, but my mother fired her crossbow. The bolt struck Lyanna's shoulder, pinning her briefly to the wall. Lyanna screamed, smoke rising where consecration touched her wound. Serapha surged up, slamming into Lyanna, blade flashing. The catacombs erupted into chaos. Steel and screams, torch smoke and blood. The Lord moved toward me, faster now, no longer patient. His hand reached for my throat. I swung the relic like a mace. It struck his chest. A sound like a bell shattering filled the chamber. The Lord screamed, an ugly, furious sound, and staggered, smoke rising from where the relic touched his armor. His skin blistered faintly beneath the black lacquer. He looked at me with something like disbelief. "It burns," he snarled. "Yes," I panted. "It does." He lunged again. I ducked, drove the silver dagger toward his ribs. He caught my wrist mid-strike, crushingly strong. Pain shot up my arm. He smiled again, cruel. "You think silver can kill me?" he purred. "I am older than." I slammed my forehead into his nose. It wasn't elegant. It was desperate. He reeled, surprised, and I tore free, slashing the silver dagger across his cheek. Smoke rose. His skin sizzled. He roared. Serapha, bloodied from her fight with Lina, suddenly appeared at my side, blade dripping. "Alaric," she shouted. Lina lay on the floor, leg twisted, snarling and trying to crawl. The Lord glared at us both, gold eyes burning. "You have become inconvenient," he snarled. "Fine. If I cannot bind you, I will break you." He lifted both hands. The threads in my blood tightened violently, and suddenly I felt it. His true power, not gentle compulsion but raw domination. The catacombs shook. Dust fell from ceilings. Skulls rattled in niches. My mother screamed as an invisible force slammed her against the wall, crossbow flying. Serapha cried out, dropping to her knees again, clutching her head. I staggered, relic humming wildly, but the pressure was too much. The Lord's voice boomed in the chamber, layered with magic. "Kneel," he commanded. My knees bent. I fought, teeth clenched, muscles trembling. The relic burned my hands, trying to answer, but the Lord's will pressed harder. Serapha looked up at me, eyes wide, mouth trembling. "Alaric," she whispered, voice breaking. "If he binds you again." "Don't," I gasped. Serapha's gaze sharpened into resolve. She rose, slowly, painfully, stepping onto consecrated stone despite the burn, moving toward the Lord. He noticed, eyes narrowing. "Serapha," he purred. "Good girl. Come back." Serapha smiled. It was not gentle. It was feral. "I am not your girl," she hissed. Then she drove her sword into her own stomach. The blade punched through crimson armor, through pale flesh. Black blood spilled. The Lord's eyes widened in shock. The pressure on us faltered. His control over her severed by her own self-inflicted wound, by the sudden rupture in the thread between them. Serapha staggered forward, using the sword still embedded in her body like an anchor, dragging herself closer. The mark bond between us flared, and I felt her pain, blinding, agonizing. But beneath it, I felt her purpose. She was tearing her own chain apart. "Now," she choked, blood on her lips. "Alaric, now." I roared, forcing my knees straight. I raised the relic with both hands and slammed it into the Lord's chest again, right over his heart. The bell sound exploded, louder than ever. Light, real light this time, pale and fierce, burst from the relic and from my veins, flooding the catacomb chamber. The Lord screamed, skin blistering, gold eyes widening with fury and something like fear. The threads snapped. I felt them break, one by one, like harp strings cut. The thralls collapsed, unconscious, freed or dead. I couldn't tell. Lina shrieked, crawling backward, eyes wide. The Lord staggered, clutching his chest. "You," he rasped, voice cracking. "You cannot." "I can," I snarled, and drove the silver dagger into his heart. The blade sank deep. Smoke billowed. The Lord's scream became a choking sound. He stared at me, gold eyes dimming, disbelief frozen on his perfect face. Then his body convulsed, ash creeping over his skin like frost. He collapsed, and in seconds he crumbled, armor and flesh turning to gray dust that scattered across consecrated stone. Silence slammed down again, heavy as a tomb. Serapha collapsed too, blood pooling beneath her. I dropped to my knees beside her, relic forgotten. Her eyes were half-lidded, breath shallow. Unnecessary, but present. Ragged as if her body remembered being human. Serapha, I whispered, voice breaking. No, no, no. She smiled faintly, blood at the corner of her mouth. I chose, she whispered. You're dying, I choked. Yes, she whispered. And I am free. My hands shook as I pressed them to her wound. Blood seeped through my fingers, dark, thick. Drink, I begged. Drink from me. Heal. Serapha's eyes widened, horror and longing warring. No, she whispered. If I drink now, I might kill you. I don't care, I sobbed. The first tears since Harrowmere. I can't. Don't leave me. Serapha's gaze softened, unbearably tender. Alaric, she whispered. Listen, you are not my redemption. You are not my excuse. You are my choice. Her hand, cool, trembling, lifted to my cheek. I wanted to understand why you lived, she whispered. Now I do. My throat closed. My mother crawled toward us, bruised and shaking. She stared at Serapha with wide, horrified eyes. Can you save her? My mother whispered to me. With the relic? I looked at the relic lying in dust. Saint Light burns nightblood. But Serapha wasn't just nightblood. She was Serapha. I grabbed the relic, hands trembling, and pressed it near her wound, careful not to touch skin. The relic hummed, then dimmed, as if refusing. My bloodline could destroy vampires, not heal them. Serapha's eyes fluttered. Don't, she whispered. Don't try to make me holy. My tears fell onto her face. She smiled faintly. Your tears are warm, she whispered, almost amused. Then her gaze sharpened, focusing on me with fierce clarity. Promise me, she whispered. Promise you will not become what he wanted. Promise you will not become a saint who burns everything in the name of light. I swallowed, sobbing. I promise, I whispered. Serapha exhaled, slow, shaky. Good, she murmured. Her hand slipped from my cheek. Her eyes closed, and in the catacombs under Grayfen Chapel, surrounded by broken skulls and Saint Bones and the dust of a vampire lord, the vampire woman who had tried to kill me in battle died in my arms. Serapha's eyes shone. And if I asked you to leave, she whispered, to run without me, would you? I thought of her bleeding in rain, of her kneeling on consecrated stone, of her refusing to abandon me even when she could have saved herself. No, I said. Serapha closed her eyes, as if the answer hurt. You should, she whispered, because I will ruin you. I laughed, bitter and soft. I'm already ruined, I said. By war, by bloodline, by the Lord's hunt, by the mark that's gone but still here. I tapped my chest. Serapha opened her eyes, gaze fierce. I will not be your excuse, she said. Do you hear me? Do not blame me for what you become. I won't, I said. But I might choose you anyway. The words hung between us, raw and trembling. Serapha stared as if I'd spoken a language she'd never learned. Why? She whispered. Because she was beautiful? Because she was tragic? Because the bond made her feel close? Those answers would have been easy. But the truth was uglier and more human. Because you keep choosing, I said. Even when it hurts. Even when it burns. You keep choosing not to be what he made you. Serapha's throat bobbed. She looked away, blinking hard. I am still what he made me, she whispered. Yes, I said gently. And you're also what you refuse. Serapha's hands clenched, trembling. Then, slowly, she reached toward me. Not to the relic. To my face. She stopped inches away, as if afraid to cross that last distance. May I? She asked, voice barely audible. The same question she'd asked when bandaging me, hit like a wave. Yes, I whispered. Her fingers brushed my cheek. The bond pulsed. not with fear or pain, but with something soft, aching, longing, and beneath longing, grief. Serapha's eyes filled, not with tears, but with a shimmer that made her red gaze look almost like embered sunset. "I don't know how to be gentle anymore," she whispered. "Try," I said. Her thumb traced the edge of my jaw, hesitant, then firmer. Then she leaned in and kissed me. It wasn't smooth. It wasn't practiced. It was hungry and careful at once, like someone tasting something forbidden. Her lips were cool but not dead. They tasted faintly of iron and herbs. I kissed her back, and in that moment I felt the absurdity and the inevitability of it. A saint-blooded soldier and a vampire captain kissing beneath a ruined chapel, preparing to fight a lord. When we broke apart, Serapha's forehead rested against mine. "If we survive," she whispered. "What then?" I swallowed, and my voice shook. "Then we find out what we become," I said. Outside, far above the catacombs, the night deepened, and somewhere in it gold eyes were moving closer. Victory did not feel like triumph. It felt like silence too big to hold. We stayed in the catacombs until the tremors stopped, until the air no longer hummed with broken threads. My mother tended the unconscious thralls, some dead, some breathing. She looked older by a decade. I sat with Serapha's body in my lap until my legs went numb. At some point, my mother placed a blanket over her, gentle as if she was human. "You can't keep her here," my mother said softly. "I know," I whispered, voice hollow. "She deserves something," my mother murmured, eyes wet. "Not ash and skulls." I nodded, throat tight. We carried Serapha out at dawn. The battlefield was gray and quiet. Mist clung to broken banners. The ruined chapel stones were slick with dew. We found a patch of earth near the chapel wall where wildflowers had begun to grow. Stubborn, absurd life pushing through mud. My mother murmured a prayer as we dug, hands shaking. I laid Serapha into the grave. Her face looked peaceful, almost young. Her hair spread like ink on the cloth. I wanted to kiss her again, but I couldn't. My body felt like a stranger. I placed the silver dagger beside her, not as a threat, as a symbol of what she had chosen. Then I covered her with earth. When it was done, I sat back on my heels, staring at the mound. I expected something: grief, rage, catharsis. Instead, I felt a hunger, not for blood, for meaning. What was I now, without the enemy to fight, without the vampire woman who had become my reason to endure? My mother sat beside me, wiping mud from her hands. "You saved the kingdom," she said quietly. I laughed, bitter. "Did I?" I asked. "Valerin is dead, but vampires remain. War remains. The crown still lies." My mother's gaze was tired. "Then you keep fighting," she said. "With what?" I snapped, then immediately regretted it. My mother didn't flinch. She just looked at me with a sorrow that felt like inheritance. "With choice," she said softly. "The only thing saints and monsters have in common is that they are always being told what they must be. The only rebellion is choosing anyway." I stared at Serapha's grave. Choice, Serapha's last word. My last promise. The relic lay in my pack now, wrapped and quiet. Its hum softened. The threads I could sense in the world still existed, faint, lingering. Vampires bound to other lords. Humans bound to fear. And within me I felt something new: power, yes, but also restraint. The memory of Serapha's hand on my cheek. Her plea not to become righteous ruin. My mother touched my shoulder. "We will rebuild," she whispered. "Not Harrowmere, perhaps not, but we will live." I nodded slowly. As we walked away from Grayfen Chapel, leaving behind the grave, the battlefield, the dust of a lord, I felt the ache deepen. Grief is a kind of tether too, but unlike vampire threads, it cannot be severed by relics or silver. It remains because you choose to let it remain. That night I dreamed, not of gold eyes, not of bone chandeliers. I dreamed of Serapha kneeling beside me, offering a wooden bowl of stew, avoiding my gaze. In the dream, she finally looked up, and she smiled small, guilty, human. When I woke, my cheeks were wet, and for the first time I didn't wipe the tears away. I let them be part of me, because I had promised. I would not become the saint who burned everything. I would become the man she chose to save, and I would carry her choice forward, not as redemption, not as excuse, but as proof that even in a world of monsters, mercy could still be an act of war.
Griffin Chapel didn't look like a holy place anymore. It looked like a mouth that had swallowed too many prayers and learned to stay silent. The dawn was thin and colorless, spreading over broken stone and rusted steel as if the world itself was unsure it deserved to begin again. Alaric stayed on his knees beside the fresh mound of earth, fingers still stand dark with soil and older things. Blood, ash, regret. The grave was small for everything Serapha had carried and heavier than any monument. Behind him the battlefield breathed its slow, empty wind, no cheers, no victory songs, just the quiet proof that evil can be beaten and still leave you hollow. He thought about the first night, how she had knelt beside him like an enemy trying to remember how to be human, how she had offered him food with both hands, refusing to meet his eyes, as if eye contact would make the lie collapse. He thought about how he demanded answer, and how she'd returned anyway, night after night, until mercy stopped being a trap and became a choice that hurt. Now she was gone, and that hurt was the only honest thing left. Alaric pressed his palm to the earth once, gentle, like he was afraid to wake her. Then he stood slow and steady, because he'd promised her he would not become another kind of monster. Not the vampire lord's puppet, not the church burning saint, not a man who used rightness as permission to destroy. He took a breath. The air tasted of wet stone and unfinished mourning. And then he walked away, not because he was done, but because he finally understood what Serapha had been trying to teach him with every bowl of food and every unspoken truth. Some wars don't end when the enemy dies. Some wars begin the moment you are free to choose what you will become. This story's real victory isn't killing the monster, it's refusing to become one. Mercy doesn't erase what was done, but it proves you are still human enough to choose differently.